I told you we don't serve strays here. The plate hit the floor with a crash, soup spreading across the tiles. Emily didn't flinch. She stepped in front of the old man, shielding him with her apron like that could protect him from the shame. Rain tapped against the windows. A few customers looked away, pretending they hadn't heard. She reached into her pocket. Then take it out of my tips. That's it. You're fired. Get out. The next morning, just as the sun broke through the fog, 200 soldiers in uniform stood outside that same diner. They didn't come for breakfast. They came for her. Emily Rhodes was the kind of woman most people walked past without noticing. She didn't mind. At 35, she had learned how to stay quiet, how to keep moving, how to disappear in plain sight. In a town like Marlow Creek, where the factory was boarded up and the streets smelled like wet metal and cigarette smoke, that kind of silence wasn't strange. It was survival. She opened the diner before dawn and closed it after dark. She smiled when people asked for extra napkins. She refilled coffee without being told. No one ever asked why she worked so much. No one asked much of anything. But Emily had her reasons. Every night she returned to a tiny upstairs room above a shuttered barber shop. One window didn't close all the way. The space heater clicked like a bad clock. And waiting for her, always, was a scruffy dog named Captain with one ear bent sideways and a loyalty that never wavered. On the nightstand sat a chipped photo frame, her and her father, a Vietnam vet in his uniform, smiling like the world hadn't already broken them. He'd raised her after her mother left, raised her with quiet rules and soft hands, and one lesson she never forgot. You do what's right, even when nobody claps, especially then. He died 5 winters ago. She hadn't cried at the funeral, not because it didn't hurt, but because she knew he'd want her to stand tall. And she did. Since then, she paid her bills late, but paid them, fed Captain before herself, and walked to work in worn shoes with soles going thin, just hoping the rain would wait one more day. She never asked for more, just for things not to get worse. And then, that night, the man with the torn coat came in, and everything changed. It was raining hard the night he walked in. The door creaked open, and a cold wind rushed inside. Everyone in the diner looked up for a second, then quickly looked back down. No one wanted to stare. No one wanted to see. He stood in the doorway, soaked from head to toe. His coat was old and torn, heavy with water. There was a faded U.S. Army patch barely hanging on one sleeve. His beard was messy and gray. His hands shook a little. One leg dragged behind him like it hurt to move. He didn't say anything. He didn't even sit. He just stood near a booth, one hand resting on the seat like he needed help to stay up. He looked around the room, not for a menu, not for a friend, just to see if anyone would let him stay. Most people looked away. Emily saw him from behind the counter. She was wiping a ketchup stain that wouldn't come off. She noticed the way he stood, the way he kept his eyes low, like he didn't want to bother anyone. He didn't look proud. He looked tired. Not just tired in his body, but tired in his heart. She walked over to him slowly, still holding the towel in her hand. "Evening," she said softly. "Can I get you something warm?" At first, he didn't look up. When he finally did, his eyes were filled with something she recognized. Pain, but also pride. The kind of pride that keeps you from asking for help, even when you really need it. "All I need is a cup of hot water, ma'am," he said, "and maybe a crust of bread, if there's any headed for the trash." His voice cracked a little, not because he was weak, but because asking for help isn't easy. Emily's chest felt tight. Her grandfather once told her a story that sounded just like this. A night in 1952, when he was cold and hungry in Busan, Korea, and a stranger gave him food. She gave a small nod. "I'll see what I can do." Back in the kitchen, there was a plate sitting under the heat lamp. Chicken and mashed potatoes. No one had touched it. Someone had sent it back earlier, but it was still warm. Still good. Emily carefully placed the food on a clean plate. She added a slice of buttered bread. Then she poured a fresh cup of black coffee, just the way her dad used to drink it. She found a cloth napkin, folded it neatly, and carried the tray to the man like it was the most normal thing in the world. "This was sent back just now," she said gently as she set the tray down in front of him. "Still hot." The man stared at the plate, confused. "I can't pay," he said softly. Emily smiled. It's already paid for, and the coffee's on me. For a moment, he didn't move. He looked at the tray like it might disappear if he touched it. Then slowly, carefully, he wrapped his hands around the warm mug. You remind me of my wife, he whispered. She used to do things like this. Said everyone deserved kindness, especially those who'd seen too much cold. Emily blinked hard. She didn't want to cry in front of him, but something in her heart cracked open. From across the diner, the owner was watching. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharp. He was already walking toward them. But Emily wasn't thinking about rules. She wasn't worried about what people thought. She was thinking about the man in front of her. Someone who had clearly lived through more than most. Someone who hadn't asked for much. Just a warm drink, and to be treated like a human being. He ate slowly, carefully. Every bite looked like it took effort. He held the fork like it was heavy, but he sat straight, never complained, never begged. When he finished, he looked up at her. His voice was quiet. You saved a soul tonight, miss. Might have been broken, but not forgotten. Then he reached into his coat. From an inside pocket, he pulled out something small. A worn, rusted dog tag, the chain thin and frayed. He pressed it into her hand. My name's Samuel Everett, he said. If I don't make it through this winter, I want someone to know I existed. And just like that, he stood and disappeared into the storm. Emily stood still, the dog tag warm in her hand. She didn't even have time to slip it into her pocket before the front door slammed open behind her. The sound made every head in the diner turn. What the hell do you think you're doing? It was Mr. Carson, the owner of the diner. His boots were wet from the rain. His voice was loud and sharp. He marched straight over, eyes locked on the empty plate in front of Samuel's now vacant seat. The steam still rising from the food made it clear. The meal had just been eaten. He was a veteran, sir, Emily said softly. He asked for hot water and a crust of bread. I gave him food that was about to be thrown out. Mr. Carson didn't care. His voice rose louder. Emily, I told you, this isn't a charity. If word gets out, we're feeding street people. Folks will stop coming in. People at the tables turned their eyes down. No one said a word. No one looked at her. Emily took a slow breath. I paid for the coffee. You can take it out of my tips. Mr. Carson slammed his hand on the counter. The noise made someone near the window flinch. I said no, he barked. You don't get to decide how I run this place. You made me look soft in front of customers. Then came the words she already knew were coming. You're fired, right now. Pack your things and leave. His hand pointed toward the door like a knife. The diner felt colder than before, not because of the weather, but because of the silence. Not one person spoke up. Not one customer said she was right. Not one person thanked her. A woman in the corner leaned toward her husband and whispered, That's what happens when you bring trouble inside. Someone coughed. Someone else went back to reading the menu like nothing had happened. Emily's hands shook as she untied her apron. She wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes. Hurt, absolutely. But not surprised. What hurt more than the shouting was the silence. She walked out into the rain. Her shoes were soaked within seconds. Her hair clung to her face. Her backpack was heavy on her shoulders, but her spine stayed straight, just like her father taught her. Emily stood under the small awning outside the diner, rain pouring just inches from her feet. Her clothes were soaked through. Her hands were still shaking. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Not now. She needed to hear everything. In the silence, even the rain seemed loud. Then, a small rustle from the alley beside the building. Samuel was there, the old veteran. He limped toward her slowly, his coat dripping wet, his breath coming in short bursts. But his eyes still had that quiet fire. I saw what happened, he said. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used much. I shouldn't have let you take the hit for me. Emily shook her head. You didn't do anything wrong. He looked down, then reached into his coat again. He pressed the dog tag into her hand, this time more firmly. You saved a shattered soul tonight, child, he said. You reminded me I wasn't invisible. Before she could say anything, he gave a small nod, then turned and walked away into the pouring rain. That night, Emily sat in her small room over the closed barber shop. Captain, her old dog, curled up beside her, his head on her leg. Her wet clothes hung over a chair, dripping quietly into a towel on the floor. The only light came from a flickering street lamp outside the window. She opened her cracked phone and checked her bank account. $42.17. Rent was due in 10 days. No job, no health insurance, no backup plan. But strangely, she didn't feel empty. She reached into her coat pocket and took out the dog tag. The name was faint but still there. Everett, Samuel J. Serial number D45812. The rest was worn down, almost gone. She ran her thumb across the letters, wondering where he had served, what he had seen, and why the world had forgotten him. She didn't know it yet, but by morning the world would remember. The rain stopped just before dawn. The streets of Marlow Creek were quiet. Puddles shimmered on the road like small mirrors. Storefronts were still dark. The traffic lights blinked yellow through the early fog. Emily was still asleep, curled up on her couch under a thin blanket. Captain lay beside her, snoring softly. Across town, something was happening. At 6:45 a.m., a low rumble rolled down Main Street. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. One by one, large black vehicles turned onto the narrow road and stopped in front of the diner. The doors opened slowly. First came a man in a perfectly pressed U.S. Army uniform. His back was straight, his chest full of medals, his eyes focused. He didn't go inside. He waited. Then, like a scene out of a dream, others came. Soldiers, dozens of them. Then more. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. They stepped out of side streets, from parked vans, from corners of the block, until 200 stood in formation outside the old diner. Not speaking, not moving, just standing. The town began to notice. Drivers slowed their cars, people came out onto porches, shopkeepers peeked through blinds. Something was happening, and everyone could feel it. Inside the diner, Mr. Carson was restocking the napkin holders. He didn't know what was waiting outside, until the bell above the door jingled. He looked up and dropped the glass in his hand. The man in the uniform stood in the doorway. His face was calm. His voice was steady. "I'd like to speak to the owner." Carson stepped forward, his voice unsure. I'm the owner." More people were gathering outside, phones recording, whispers spreading. The soldier removed his cap. "My name is Major Daniel Everett," he said. "I'm the son of the man you threw out yesterday." And just like that, the air changed. The diner went silent. The town held its breath. Emily was still in her small room when someone knocked on the door. She opened it and found a local news reporter standing there, face red from running, breath short. "They're asking for you," she said. "The soldiers. The whole street's shut down. You have to come, now." Emily didn't understand, but when she looked outside, she saw the crowd. Hundreds of people, phones out, all facing the diner. And then she saw them. Soldiers, all in uniform, lined up like statues, not saying a word, waiting for her. As Emily walked toward the diner, the line of soldiers slowly moved aside, just enough to let her pass. Then at the same moment, they all raised their hands in salute. 200 soldiers, saluting a waitress. Emily stopped. She couldn't move. Her throat felt tight. She looked at them, then at Major Everett, who stepped forward holding the small black box. "My father wanted you to have this," he said. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I don't deserve it." He gently placed the silver star in her hand. "You already earned it," he said. The diner closed the very next day. Suppliers stopped calling. Workers walked out. Veteran groups picketed out front. Mr. Carson left town and never came back. But Emily didn't brag. She didn't post anything online. She just kept doing what she always did, helping others. Only now she had help. A veterans group gave her a full-time job at a new community kitchen. The same soldiers who stood for her came back to work beside her. In one corner of her small office sat a wooden box. Inside it, her father's dog tags, Samuel's tag, and the silver star. 1 week later, just before closing, a small boy walked into the kitchen. He couldn't have been older than 7. In one hand, a dollar bill. In the other, a cookie wrapped in wax paper. "I saw you in the video," he said. "My grandpa was a soldier too. He helped people. So I want to help too." He placed the cookie and the dollar on the counter. Emily knelt down, heart full, eyes soft. "Can I use this to help someone else?" he asked. She didn't speak. She just placed her hand over her heart, just like the soldiers did for her. Thanks for watching. If you believe every person deserves respect, no matter where they come from or what they look like, hit subscribe. And if you've ever stood up for someone who was being ignored or wish you had the courage to, tell us in the comments. Your story might give someone else the strength to do the same.